The meditation this morning came in part from, the part that I read from Ernest Holmes came 100% from his writing and message called Brave New World. And that is the title of our message today, Brave New World, based on his writing. At the beginning of what he had to say, he wrote, "There was a time when a man was so convinced that the world was round that he was determined to prove it." Of course, he was speaking about Columbus, and Columbus believed that if the world was round, then he would be able to circumnavigate all around from Europe to Asia. And so, of course, during that time, there was a lot of fear, a lot of superstition, and there was ignorance. And as I've said before, I really like that word ignorance because although it didn't have a great connotation when I was growing up, I've kind of switched that idea. And ignorance is what we don't know until we do. And so we are very capable of knowing. But during those times when there was so much ignorance and fear, it took him quite a while before he was able to find someone who would finance his adventure. But he eventually did, as we know. And it has been said that it's because he carried himself with such an air of confidence. He had such great certainty, courage, and persistence, and imagination, I'm going to add, that it led him to attain the resources to follow his dream, to pursue his adventure. Then there's another man we've all heard of, who also was a man of courage, persistence, and certainty, and that's Jesus. Jesus came to teach that each one is a spiritual being living in a spiritual universe. He taught that there is an inner center of wholeness and perfection within all of us. Jesus also had such a spiritual conviction and inner awareness of truth that he convinced everyone so incredibly that he changed the world as it was known during those times throughout the course of humankind. He opened up new territory in the minds of many. He taught that the idea that each has a direct path of communion or communication with the divine. Now, Holmes picked up on those ideas too and wrote and elaborated about them a lot. So here we are, each one of us, right here, right now, having heard much of that in similar fashion previously. Each one of us a center of perfection, trying to live our lives in a way that we find great discoveries for ourselves by being courageous, persistent, and imaginative. Holmes wrote a question that I thought was worthy of us pondering. He asked, can we grasp the meaning and significance of a direct relationship to something that, while is greater than we are, is at the same time what we are? So I'm going to break it down a little bit. Maybe some of you get that. My husband lives in that logical place. I live in that creative place where I like it broken down a little bit. So it led the question to me of, can the drop in the ocean understand the significance of being what the ocean is and knowing the power and presence of the whole ocean back of it? Now, we often talk about the drop in the ocean when we're looking and talking about oneness, or the idea of feeling like we're separate. And we look at how one drop can be taken out of the ocean. And if that's you and we drop you back into the ocean, we can't find you in there. We can only find the whole. We might be able to quickly grab a pail and scoop up that area there, but we don't know which drop you are, because you are a part of all of it. And just like the drop in the ocean, the entire ocean is back of it. And so that led me to the question for each one of us, or for me, if you don't want it. Can you understand the significance of being what the universal wholeness is, and know the power and the presence of the one is back of you? Whatever it is you desire to experience greater of in your life. And I know when what's that movie? Before What the Belief?
Secret?
Yeah, The Secret came out and we all got poo-pooed. It was like, well, you can't just wish for an elephant and it will appear, or a car and suddenly it's in your driveway. Well, maybe yes, maybe no. But I would venture a guess that most of us are wanting to feel a greater peace, a greater health, wholeness, joy, greater love in our relationships, maybe a greater ability to speak from a place of love. So although our life, all through our life, we are on a journey of self-discovery, we get to play with those ideas within us and what thoughts bring that to us. So we're on this path of self-discovery, even when we're feeling strong and confident, because I don't know about you, but every Sunday while I'm here with all of you and all that energy, I'm strong and confident. And then I go out into the world sometimes and something happens and I maybe slide back just a little bit. But the truth still remains there. I am learning and growing through those experiences. So as I step into them, I am still learning and growing, building who I choose to be. So even when we don't think we're learning, we're still learning. Even when we're resistant to a situation, we're learning. Sometimes we learn at a rapid rate, and sometimes we learn at a slow rate. I sometimes call myself a slow learner when I happen to notice that that took me a while to realize. Sometimes we might even take a step back, but that's still learning. We might be learning which way we want to go or which way we don't want to go, which thoughts bring to us what we truly desire. So even when we're at a standstill, the learning is still occurring. The things around us and within us are still moving. Our cells are still vibrating. Do you ever take the time to just stop and maybe sit and watch and listen? I had that opportunity this week. A few nights ago, we ate dinner out in our backyard, and I felt as though I was in paradise, a heavenly state of experience. But I felt like I'd never been there before, and I've lived in this house for years and years, so surely I have been. But there were new birds that were coming to the fence, and there were more than ever by the fence. I mean, coming and landing on the fence. One of them had a nest right by our front door where the table is, so She was chirping quite a bit at us because she has eggs in that nest and does every spring. I don't know if it's the same bird or not, but I felt as though it was in paradise. I was in paradise. The jasmine was in full bloom, and the scent was just incredible. There were soft, white, puffy clouds against a blue sky, and the variety of greens in the trees were vibrant and lush. They were actually indescribable. I felt as though I'd never been in that beautiful setting before, and at the same time, I realized that I had had that thought previously, that I had felt like I'd never been able to see that yard with such beauty in the past. It was a brand new world. I was in a brave new world, yet one that I recognized because of oneness, because there is really only one. So sometimes what appears to be our past and our future seem to collide with our present moment. And it's a magnificent experience. Spiritually, it is known as the divine now. In quantum, it's known as entanglement. And I think that word is something I'm intending to use it more, so you might want to be more familiar with it. Quantum says that entanglement is the opposite of what we consider it to be. We might say, oh, my ball of yarn got all entangled, or my necklace got all entangled, and it's in a big knot and I can't get it out. We might even throw it away, thinking it was then useless. But entanglement in quantum, the definition is two particles are connected and affect one another, even if those particles are light years apart. We are always affecting our own body and each other. And that's oneness. That's a brand new world, or a brave new world in each and every moment.
It depends how you look at it, isn't it? Ernest Holmes described the legacy of Columbus as one man's courage and persistency backed by an interior vision, which made it possible to discover a new world. You know, the truth is we all have that same capability. We have the same possibility within us. Ernest Holmes quite often said, there's no large or small in the mind of God. What we would consider to be a large or small thing, to God is nothing but a different thing, another possibility. And so we choose, and then we are able to bring into our experience whatever thought is. Like Columbus, Ernest Holmes was on the ground floor of a new discovery and a new way of looking at our place in the cosmos, and a new way of looking at our relationship with divinity, and a way of looking at our relationship in and as the divine. So it's quite different in a way. We, as religious scientists, are on the cutting edge of technology. And the technology isn't really as new as we commonly think, but we're still on the leading edge because our spiritual teaching is founded on scientific principle that is barely understood by the masses. There are several parallels between the voyage of Christopher Columbus and our use of quantum theory and its relevance to our spiritual tradition in science of mind. So I created an interesting timeline regarding the advent of quantum theory and the development of science of mind philosophy through the life of Ernest Holmes. Ernest Holmes was born in 1887. 3 years later, in 1900, Max Planck, a German theoretical physicist, discovered the quantum of action known as Planck's constant. And that was considered to be the birth of quantum theory, or quantum physics. In 1922, Max Planck and Niels Bohr Two of the founding fathers of quantum theory each received Nobel Prizes in physics for their work on quanta. And quanta is the fundamental level of atomic energy. Einstein is considered the third founder of quantum theory because he described light as quanta in his theory of the photoelectric effect. You don't need to know what all that stuff is. You just need to know that it was something was happening at that time. He received a Nobel Prize in 1921 for that discovery. Now, since that time, quantum science has been used in many ways to make our life what it is right now. But few people, even after more than 100 years of the discovery and validation as Nobel Prize recognized truth, truly understand the underlying significance or the gravity of quantum physics and principles and the implications for our personal application. I don't think most of us really understand that. The Science of Mind, our textbook as we call it, by Ernest Holmes, was published in 1926, only 4 years after those Nobel Prizes, when the quantum science research was still in its infancy. Holmes had personal conversations with Einstein and other great scientists and thinkers, and he was able to draw correlations between the new approach for the study of life to the teachings of Jesus 2,000 years before, other spiritual traditions, and the pre-Socratic philosophers centuries earlier than that. Nearly 600 years BC, philosophers were talking about theories related to quantum mechanics. But even now, 2.5 millennia later, people say, it hurts my brain to think about it. I've heard that comment several times. That was Richard Feynman in 1965, who was a renowned theoretical physicist, said, I think I can safely say that nobody understands quantum mechanics. And he wasn't talking about the normal man, he was just talking about everybody, including the scientists. And that was 60 years ago. And I don't think the general public has made much progress since then. Peter Higgs received the Nobel Prize in Physics for the discovery of the God particle in 2013. But mechanical physics is still taught in public schools. Now, I don't know very much about all the curriculum of the public schools, but I don't believe quantum physics is there in any of them. Although it is the new science and is generally considered to be relevant and logical. Well, back to Columbus to make some more correlations. In the 3rd century BC, Greek astronomers established the spherical, easy for me to say, shape of Earth and as a physical fact in the calculation of the Earth's circumference. It wasn't until 1492 that Columbus sailed the ocean blue, sailing west instead of to the continent, around the continent to Asia. So it took nearly 1,800 years for someone to attempt to apply a theory and a principle. By the way, most of the people in 1492 already knew that the Earth was round. Proving the Earth was round was not Columbus's mission. He didn't prove the Earth was round, he simply discovered a continent, a very nice one we might say too as well. And a lot of the accounts of Columbus's journey are more mythical than factual, but what remains is the idea that he stepped out on a possibility, stepped out into an unknown, but an generally believed concept and principle, and actually created something new. Well, whether he created it, he didn't really create this continent, but he did find something and discover something based more on his belief system than anything else. The key to it all, and the point of it all, is that we don't have to understand quantum mechanics to recognize how it works in our lives. Likewise, we don't have to know how and what God is or how God works. We don't have to know how universal law works. We just have to know how to use it and have confidence and faith enough to rely on it. The same confidence and faith that Columbus had when he sailed west to get to China. Just imagine what must be available for us to discover simply by applying natural law.
So let's look at some of that. And let's start by thinking about the world today. And so I know that if you watch the news or listen to the news, that we could make the statement that humankind often seems confused. And Holmes wrote that when he gave this talk also. Humankind seems confused. I'm going to add words like disoriented, stumbling, and warring. I don't know again if warring is a word, but I'm using it. Warring. And I am not just talking about country to country. I'm talking about, I'm not even going to list them. You can think in your own head about the different groups that are warring. And I try to teach my 5th graders that it begins with them. Because when they have a challenge, 2 of them, and they just turn mean with each other, they don't get anywhere. They're warring. I don't use that word with them, but they are warring. And that kind of behavior is what leads to more and more and more. We can have our opinions, we can have our thoughts, we can have our ideas. We don't have to hate those that have a different idea than us. We have to learn that they are us. Holmes wrote that we must discover the missing link, something that can bind humanity together in one common good, while at the same time leaving freedom for all. The common link. So let us think of all the wise people from the ages. Just get a little quick mental list of the people that you think did a lot of good and brought a lot of good, and you like the ideas that they have shared. And see that they share the understanding that there is an entangled hierarchy within all of life. It is that spirit within. And used it as guidance. And we can now use it as our guidance. Use that spirit within us, that spirit that we are. If we just ask ourselves, what would the love within me do in this situation? We're going to know. We're going to know how that love would speak, how it would act. We want to discover together ways to think and physically maneuver toward a world that is peaceful, a world that exemplifies being spirit in action on earth. Surely this pathway of great goodness is what Jesus meant when he said, "Greater works than these will you do." It all begins with each one of us individually. We have to recognize that loving kindness of life that we are, so that every task that we undertake, every thought that we have reflects it. And then see that oneness of all life around us. Look for the good. I challenge you this week. When you see something that you might think, Deborah's all wrong, there's nothing good about that one, I challenge you to think of something that is good. Because I know for myself, sometimes what I come up with is, well, the only thing I can think of that's good for that situation in this moment is that I recognize it as a way that I don't want to be, or a scenario that I don't want to play a part of. That is good. Find your good. So Holmes tells us this, and I think this is good for a chuckle, but also very true. We cannot, like a fairy godmother, wave a wand, and have what we desire appear. Instead, we have to create a thought that is more powerful than any wand or any magic of mythology's magicians. We need to face life in a light of new truth, a new understanding and a conviction that we are in partnership with the infinite. Then we may receive direct guidance and know how to live as human beings, because we have first discovered that we are spiritual beings. So whatever is going on in your life today, let's know together a brave new world, one where we willingly let ourselves be known as the divine being we are as we live and move and have our being in life. And we're going to end today with words from Ernest Holmes, as he ended.
Today is a fresh beginning, a new start, and a joyous adventure on the pathway of eternal progress. Today is bright with hope and happy with fulfillment. Therefore, I affirm that this is the day that God has made, that it is good, and that I find fulfillment in it. And so it is.
So it is.